I'm Jay Lyman, Senior Analyst with 451 Research, now a division of S&P Global Market Intelligence. I am pleased to be joined today by Damien Eversman, Delivery Strategist for Higher Education at Red Hat. Thanks for being here, Damien.
Happy to be here, Jay.
Today we're going to be talking about enterprise IT trends as they pertain to higher education. To start it off, let's talk about the movement to the cloud. We do see organizations leveraging more public cloud infrastructure, moving more applications and workloads to the public clouds. At the same time, organizations are still leveraging their on-premises and private cloud deployments. So Damien, maybe you could tell us a little bit about how hybrid cloud and the move to the cloud is being viewed and being done in higher ed.
You know, I've been in public sector for about 5 years now. Higher education's been a specialty for the last handful. And I completely agree with you. We're seeing moves all over the place to the cloud, but it's never 100% move to the cloud. It's always we're going to put a little bit in the cloud, backup, failover, that sort of thing, and we're going to maintain an on-premise infrastructure. With higher ed, that's been a bit of a sticking point for them over the past 5 years because in many cases, there's a little bit more hesitancy to go to the cloud for them. They're used to being more self-sufficient, doing things themselves. And what we're really starting to see, which is really interesting in higher ed, is instead of going to a lot of the big cloud providers, you know, the AWSs, the Azures, the Googles, in a lot of cases, they're starting to pool their resources and create shared clouds among them. So it's actually almost a third tier of the cloud that we haven't seen before. There is definitely movement into the cloud, and a lot of the cloud providers, the public cloud providers, have started to really kind of draw in universities, giving them a lot of special tweaks and things. But the most exciting thing has been the collaboration between those universities to sort of build their own private shared clouds among themselves.
Yeah, and another interesting trend that we're tracking involves cloud native, things like containers and Kubernetes. And our research is showing that even though the initial sort of first wave of applications that were containerized were stateless, mostly web applications, that did not require data persistence. We are seeing in our surveys, much more containerization of stateful applications, databases, data services, and data analytics software such as Apache Hadoop, Spark, or Kafka, and Kubeflow and TensorFlow. What are you seeing in the higher ed vertical in this regard?
Very similar movement that you've been talking about. Obviously, containers, like you said, are stateless by default. And so you need to sort of build state around your container deployment mechanism. We are seeing very much the same thing in higher ed, especially those latter two that you mentioned, the TensorFlow and the Kubeflow, where we're really seeing a lot of this movement towards the more stateful applications are in AI ML sort of workloads. The machine learning and artificial intelligence workloads really process a ton of data. And stateless applications aren't always the best way to handle that. You need to actually be able to have the data closer to the processing. So we're seeing a lot around the research workloads that are happening, some of the high performance computing workloads that are starting to be containerized and move into that sort of microservices based workflow. We're seeing a lot of that really around those workloads. And even to a certain extent, we're seeing some databases start moving into containers. The monolithic databases that we've been used to for decades now don't perform so well in containers. But if you're really going down that microservices architecture road, you start to realize that using micro databases, some of the non-SQL type of databases, those work really well with containers and microservices, where each sort of process is supposed to be responsible for its own data. So you are seeing state being introduced into container orchestration, but it's happening in a very different way than what we've seen with the more stateful applications of previous decades.
Yeah, it also seems there might be a match there for sort of the research, the analytics, the deep learning that we see at academic institutions. And this is a lot of the technology that's used to get there.
Oh, absolutely. The idea behind a container being really nimble, really fast to spin up, really quick to spin down, when you're looking at the processing power that's required for high performance and high throughput computing or machine learning type of workloads, it really makes sense to be able to have, instead of dozens of machines churning on it, having thousands of parallel containers able to process through these workloads, spin up really quick, do their job, and then spin back down really quick. It helps spread out the workload. It helps get better data center density. It helps them to be more efficient with these very quickly changing workload sizes that you see with artificial intelligence and machine learning.
It's always been interesting to track open source software in the public sector, both in education and in government. And we see pretty prominent role for open source software in the enterprise, and driven not only by cost savings and avoiding paying software royalties, but a lot of the other advantages around open source software, broader development community, flexibility with other components, access to source code, and some of these other advantages beyond cost that's driving it. What can you tell us about how open source software is viewed and used in higher education?
The parallel that I like to draw really is that open source software is sort of the brainchild of higher education, right? We started seeing a lot of the really early open source projects coming out of higher education. A lot of the research projects that led into the open source world came out of the early days of the Unix operating system and a lot of the tools that were being developed for use in the Unix operating system. So it's really a good pairing, open source and higher education, mainly because higher education tends to like to roll up their sleeves a little more, get their hands dirty. Like you said, they're the ones who are actually contributing to the source code, looking at and inspecting the source code. I don't think a week goes by anymore where we don't see headlines about ransomware, right? And one of the scariest things about ransomware in a lot of cases is you don't have access to that source code sometimes that is being used to leverage that ransomware exploit against you. And I think universities, public institutions, they feel a little bit more self-aware, more stable if they can actually look at the source code. They feel like they can actually inspect it themselves and have a better connection to what's going on. And I agree with you, it might have started off being about price, right? Not wanting to pay licensing fees and that sort of thing. But I think with the workloads that we talked about earlier, the AI ML workloads and the high performance computing workloads and some of the really heavy lifting that the workloads are doing now, even higher education institutions are getting less and less interested in dealing with maintaining the platform. And they're more willing to pay someone else to provide them with the platform so they can focus on that research workload that is really their bread and butter.
Considering what's driving organizations today, particularly their IT and their application and software development and deployment teams and DevOps teams, where developers are working with IT operators, things like speed and efficiency are certainly still important, but our survey data, again, is showing that other advantages, particularly organizational agility, has really become a top priority. And this is responding to any number of changes. It might be new technology like cloud native, it might be security breaches and incidents, or as we saw last year, it might be a global pandemic. So, how has that affected higher ed organizations and sort of their priorities as they consider their strategy in moving their IT and their objectives forward?
I think you really touched on a really important point there with that last remark about, a global pandemic. If there's anything that 2020 taught not just higher education institutions, but government entities and even corporate institutions, if we thought we were prepared for things, we certainly know that we weren't, now. I think one of the biggest points that was learned is we still don't know what we don't know, right? There are a lot of changes that institutions have gone through in the last year, learning about disaster recovery in ways that they never expected to be, need to handle, right? Disaster recovery always had time spans in days and maybe at most weeks. And as we discovered, during COVID-19, we needed disaster recovery plans that spanned months and even years. And on top of that, we needed to be able to be nimble and adjust to the fact that those people that we were assuming would be able to come back into the office or the data center and do their day-to-day job maybe aren't going to be able to do that. And so some of the things that we're starting to see really pique the interest of higher education institutions are not just things like containers and Kubernetes and the things that help them streamline their workloads, but it's also things like enterprise automation and monitoring tools and the sorts of things that maybe weren't front of mind before a pandemic, right? And now they're looking at ways to take all of the workloads that enterprise IT, not just the researchers, but enterprise IT, or even, instructional IT with the professors and the learning management systems. There's a lot of automation that we're seeing go into place around those things that really wasn't a priority prior to 2020. So definitely universities are always trying to be on the bleeding edge of the workloads that they're able to run and how they're able to run them, supercomputing and AI ML, and all those sorts of things. But now we're seeing enterprise automation, enterprise IT stability, being able to monitor those workloads. It's things that weren't a priority before that education institutions and the greater IT community are realizing are really important too.
And I think we'll wrap our discussion there. Thanks very much, Damien, for being here.
Absolutely, I had a blast. And if you have any more information that you'd like to get about Red Hat technologies, you can feel free to visit us at redhat.com. If you want to talk about higher education, go ahead, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to join in on any conversation.
To learn more about our research and data, you can visit 451research.com.